And now, I'm delighted to say we've been joined by George Romero, Hollywood legend. He's got a new movie out, and it's at the Fright Fest Film Festival. George Romero, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hi there. This is now going to be a unique combination of live cricket and horror. What do you know about cricket, George?
Not very much. I'm an American baseball. I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan.
There is a very famous EC comic strip which ends with a baseball game played by zombies using severed limbs for...
limbs for bases.
Absolutely.
I think somebody's heart was used as home base. I don't remember, but...
That's right, yeah.
That's the stuff. I grew up on that stuff, and it always gives me a giggle, so...
George, George, our conversation will be interrupted by bouts of applause and cheering and that kind of thing, and we'll explain why people are cheering and applauding as we go through. So,
well, you can just let people think they're cheering for me. That's all right.
Okay, so all the applause you hear is for George A. Romero, who has his next zombie movie out. It's called Land of the Dead. Tell us about this particular movie, George.
Well, I've made 3 other zombie films earlier: Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead, and I'm sort of back with my buddies. It's a as the crowd.
Yep, the crowd are thrilled that the 4th in the quadrilogy has come in, and that's what they're cheering for.
That's what they're cheering for.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got this is the 4th of your zombie movies.
Yeah.
So why have you decided to make another one, George?
Well, I don't, I'll keep making them as long as I'm standing. As they're actually, I don't think of them as scary films necessarily. They're action adventure, and my stuff is known for its gore, which is probably something that comes from those EC comic books, and it's a platform that I can keep coming back to, and what underlies my films, I hope people recognize, is they're sort of a socio-political context. They're really snapshots of the time of the decade in which they were made.
So which aspects of this decade have you picked on to make sort of some kind of socio-political commentary from?
Well, I think some people might recognize, Bush or Cheney or Rumsfeld in Dennis Hopper's character.
and tell us what Dennis Hopper does.
He's the villain of the piece. He's basically runs the administration, and it's my way or the highway, attitude, and he keeps the sort of working classes in their place, and if you don't agree with his policies, you're out of luck. So there's a bunch of that in there, and there are images that are called up from the immediately pre 9/11 and post 9/11, this new normal that's in the United States now. There's a.
I don't know do your zombies behave in a different way to the way zombies have traditionally played in your films? We've seen zombies running recently. Was it 24 Hours, Mark?
But they're not. This is very crucial. In 28 days later, they're not zombies. They're infected. This is very important.
Right.
They're infected. They're not. No, I know it's a technical difficulty, but for somebody like me who wrote for Fangoria for 5 years, it's very important. They're not zombies. They're infected. Whereas what George Romero's films are, they're definitely zombies. They are the ambulant dead.
Okay, so can your zombies run, for example, George?
Well, in the remake of Dawn, they ran. I just don't.
Yes,
it's just not my thing.
I'd like to jump in here and say every great horror fan loves, Night of the Living Dead, which incidentally I do think is one of the scariest films ever made. Dawn of the Dead, which is a fantastic look at consumerism. It's very arch, very funny, very strange, very, very gory. And Day of the Dead, which is to some extent about vivisection and is also about the zombies having proper characters. And as with so many great horror filmmakers, as George was saying, what you're fascinated in is that you sympathise with the beast. And, of course, in Land of the Dead, actually, some of the zombies are easily the most sympathetic character, to the point that as the movie goes on, we discover some kind of resolution between the live character and the dead character. Now, oddly enough, Shaun of the Dead, whose makers, as you probably know, are absolutely in love with George Romero's movies.
And George Romero's in love with them.
Yeah, you like Shaun of the Dead,
I'm wearing my For Real Electric badge right now that they gave me. I love that. We've started to hang out. They actually came to be. Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright came to be zombies in Land of the Dead.
Yeah. Well, you remember at the end of Shaun of the Dead, the punchline of it is actually that the dead end up living with the living, and they all learn to live together in harmony. And oddly enough, there is something of a move towards that in Land of the Dead. I have to say that, as a horror fan, I think, George Romero is a living legend, and I think it's...
Up at Durham, as I was talking about
right.
earlier, and you had the rules of cricket explained to you by Mike
by
Gatting.
Mr. Batting.
Yeah. And confused everybody. And by the time he'd finished, no one had including Pat Murphy.
Including him.
Had absolutely no idea how this game was played. So I think as we have the great Alex Stewart here, maybe you could just... maybe
what?
Mark has progressed in his understanding of cricket in the 2 intervening years.
Well, I'd like to think so, Mark, because once you sampled Durham and that wonderful test match only lasted 2 and a bit days.
Yes.
Modes of dismissal.
Leading scorer yourself.
Modes of dismissal?
Modes of dismissal, I'm going to ask you.
What does that mean in English? Modes of dismissal means what?
How could you be out at cricket?
How could you be out at cricket? You can be bowled out.
Excellent.
You can be caught out if you hit the ball and somebody catches it before it hits the floor.
Very, very impressive.
You can be stumped if you come out of the crease and the guy behind it, I want to call him the backstop, but he's actually the wicket keeper, isn't it?
You're better than good.
You can be leg before wicket.
Oh,
if the ball hits and it's going towards the wicket, I know that. You can be run out. You can be run out if you don't manage to get into when you're doing the running and they throw the ball and hit the what's it. You can be timed out. Hello?
Am I on?
Yeah, you are.
It's my programme.
There you go.
At least I have a microphone. What's in you going to see a zombie movie? Can you be on the zombie side?
Because the point is that in the previous movies, the zombies have been, for example, the forces of consumerism. In Day of the Dead, the zombies were very much the victims who were being used and abused by the living. In this movie, they are the dispossessed. They are the outcast who have to take their revenge upon the wealthy, who are in fact lording it up, even whilst all this stuff is going on outside. There are a couple of really, really eerie sequences. There's one beautiful sequence with the zombies coming out of a river, which calls to mind, on the one hand, Carnival of the Souls, on the other hand, a movie called Zombie Lake, which I'm sure you have in your own personal collection.
Me and Mrs. Mayo were actually just sitting down with the kids to watch it tonight.
To watch Zombie Lake, exactly, because it is...
it was either Dora the Explorer,
yes,
Bear in the Big Blue House, or Zombie Lake.
Yeah, and as Nazi zombie movies go, Zombie Lake is definitely one of the better ones.
Is that a big genre?
What, Nazi zombie movies? You would be amazed.
I would.
You would, but let's not even go there. I think the disappointment, if there is one, of Land of the Dead is that it's not fantastically modern. I mean, it could have been made pretty much the day after Dawn of the Dead, let alone Day of the Dead. It's very much an old-fashioned kind of movie. It has all this sort of upfront gore, which I've always liked in those movies, although for the first time it's been given a 15 rating, because nowadays the BBFC think that fantasy violence is perfectly fine, and they've actually accepted that the core audience for that is teenagers. It's not in any way sexualised violence, it's fantasy violence. And in fact, their little guidebox starts off by saying contains strong language. And lashings of gore, obviously, but I think
and
the language
people
is
coming back to life.
the lashings of gore is the thing that they bother about most. There's one fantastic line in which Dennis Hopper says, in a world in which the dead have returned to walk the earth, the word trouble loses some of its clout. And you think, yes, absolutely. It's nice, it's intelligent, it's smart. It's not a classic. I don't think it's quite up there with the others. There are a couple of crunky performances. Asia Argento is not terrific, but on the other hand, she is Asia Argento. So therefore, she is Dario's daughter. Dario was such an important part of Dawn of the Dead being the big success that it was. So if you're a horror fan, you don't care. You just forgive